What's going on, everyone? Matt here for a Friday edition of GR Weekly, breaking down our part 2 of our preview for Week 11, as well as reviewing, I think, the worst game of the year. A lot of news today. I got to get this in and out, trying to go for about a half hour because I need to do some family stuff, and I got to get some homework in before a midnight deadline because I am a big old procrastinator. But we got to have it started off with just a few of our housekeeping duties. One, make sure to follow, like, subscribe, do all that sort of stuff. Make sure to like and subscribe on the Gridiron Ratings YouTube channel for not only my show, but other shows we got on our site between Getting Defensive on Tuesdays and Thursdays and the slate on the weekend. As well as make sure to follow me at Methodical1. Make sure also check out my ranks, which is my pinned link in my profile at Methodical1. Make sure to also follow Gridiron Ratings at Gridiron Rating, no S, over on Twitter. And with that, let's get into the games. Starting off with the New England versus Atlanta game. New England won that game 25-0. Awesome. Without Patterson, the Falcons were an absolute disgrace. There is no reason to really mince words on that one. This is one of the worst offenses, I think, in football now without Calvin Ridley. Without Ridley, they have now totaled 16 points in 3 of the last 4 games, 215, and also 3 of those 4 less than 215 total yards. Now, Patterson, we didn't really think the Atlanta Falcons were going to have to rely on him for a good source of offense going into the year. But without him, the Patriots were really able to key in on Kyle Pitts. Without Ridley, this offense has really suffered. We do not know if he's going to return this season, whether or not he's going to be playing again. If he does, great. If he doesn't, this is the team we're going to have to deal with. Mike Davis was not good. Wayne Gallman was always a trap, but all of a sudden getting involved as much as he did. Davis is going to be a firm sit going forward no matter what. If he's not able to pick up receiving work in a situation like this, there's no really reason to go out and start him. Otherwise, with the rest of the team, the receivers are never going to be anything we're really going to hang our head on. But Kyle Pitts, going into the week, I got a little bit of favor on Twitter from it. I ranked Dan Arnold ahead of him for Week 11. And going forward, I don't really think there's a reason to really have to mash Kyle Pitts into your lineups if this is the offense you're going to get. Now, again, Cordell Patterson being out, that changes things, of course. But, man, I do not like this offense. I do not like what the Atlanta Falcons are doing. Not really much else to say, unfortunately, for this team. For the Patriots, really congrats to those who played New England defense last night. 25-point blowout. That was really only a good fantasy contributor in this one. As Aguilar, you weren't starting. But really hats off, I got to say, at least to the New England Patriots as a whole, in terms of what they're offensively doing. I guess a little bit of what their pick 6 sort of production is as well. But with 6 games left to play, they're 26 points shy of their 2020 points scored total. Currently the 6th highest scoring team in the NFL. Now the only 2 teams who have played in Week 11, of course. But the team has really brought themselves out of the basement that they were in 2020. Not much offensive juice was necessarily needed across the board. Hunter Henry had a disappointing game. Didn't get much out of Jacoby Myers as well. We got to talk about this backfield, though. If they're going to split these touches, 13-11 favor Ramondre Stevenson in this one, if they're going to go with a true committee sort of look, we have to really change what we're going to think about Damian Harris. And I guess with Ramondre Stevenson as well. But a committee won't do much for us in terms of fantasy production. If there was one player, it would have been a pretty good fantasy game. They combined for over 110 total rushing yards. But if it's going to be split between 2 players, that is a problem for us because we're going to have all this work split between Harris and Stevenson. We're going to have no options instead of, there's not really a 2-option sort of scenario that these New England Patriots really putting out for us for a fantasy standpoint. But I do think I'm leaning a little bit towards the fact that it was a short week. I'm hoping that Harris will be the better fantasy option going into Week 12. See what it is. Short week, coming out of the concussion. They want to get Stevenson more involved. It's not a competitive game. Going to have Harris ranked higher, but I'll have him ranked lower than I had this week, which is around running back 19 or so. So something to really look forward to for him. And now on to the previews. Let me get some water. Washington versus Carolina. Carolina favored by 3.5, 43-point over-under. McLaurin and Gibson are going to come in as really mid wide receiver 2, running back 2 options. They're very just good. I don't think there's a great plays, but if they're going to get the amount of work they normally do, then we're going to be overly fine with them. The problem I have in terms of McLaurin, this has just been an overall bad passing offense and bland. We've had just a complete streak of multiple games without multiple passing touchdowns. If we're not going to have any sort of ceiling sort of outlook for McLaurin, he's not really going to push himself into being a top 12 option for me really anywhere, unless we see some real better production out of Heineke in this pass attack. Again, they have not had Logan Thomas. They have not had Carter Samuel. We don't expect those players this week. We just got to really update through the weekend. But man, we're seeing just mediocre play, I think, on McLaurin. I don't think it's entirely his fault. And also Gibson, if he comes back down to earth and after having his largest rushing workload he has had in his entire career, 24 carries against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers run defense, if they can replicate even a slight bit of that, I'm going to be coming in too low. And I have him running by like 16 or so. If he sees the amount of work he did last week, he's going to be a top 12 back. I'm not leaning on that exactly happening. I don't trust that he's going to get amount of work that we're really going to be super duper excited with, as Ron Rivera has not really shown any sort of consistency in that matter. On the Carolina side, Cam, the athlete isn't in question here. He's an extremely proficient athletic player. But the passing efficiency and the accuracy and how he's going to be able to push the ball downfield and get to his receivers, that we still need to see. All right. RPO sort of stuff, working near the goal line, all that sort of anything that involves Cam just using his body. I'm not worried about that. It's just really about the arm. It's about the passing efficiency. Let's see about that. So I'm not ranking inside my top 12. I understand there are rankers who are doing so. There's around 20 of the near 200 who are ranking Cam as a top 12 option this week. And I understand. I don't think maybe they're just a little bit out ahead of the rest of the pack. I kind of want to see it. I don't think it's a bad quarterback week. So if we're seeing, him getting pushed up, there was someone who has him like at 2 is a little impressive, but otherwise, 8 through 12, I don't really see any too much issue with that. But I like to think of him as a quarterback, 14 through 18 sort of option than 8 through 12 for me personally. Otherwise, the rest of the team, Chris McCaffrey, congratulations, he's back at the top of my ranks. I'm gonna wince kind of like every single time he goes to ground. They're gonna grind him into dust, but he is one who's going to just see just an absolute mess of touches. I talked about it actually in other shows, but I just want to reiterate for the fantasy playoffs for weeks 15, 16, 17. He has to face the Buffalo Bills, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the New Orleans Saints. There is not really a worse trio for a run for a rush attack in the NFL than those three. So just something to keep in mind. Otherwise, in terms of the rest of these guys, Moore is my top 20. Anderson's my top 40. If Cam comes out and produces well enough, I'll probably be like 10 spots higher on these guys going forward. Maybe we see more go back from being, to the wide receiver one we saw early in the year when he was getting, 15 targets a game or something. But as of right now, I don't really see a reason to really push the envelope. Again, just with Cam, I want to see what goes on with him. I want to see what goes on with Anderson. It was nice they scored a touchdown last week, but let's just still kind of sit comfortably on, pushing him too far up the ranks for right now. San Francisco versus Jacksonville. Jacksonville is the 6-point dogs here to the San Francisco 49ers, 45-point over-under. I'm just going to think of this game as Mitchell is out. He is doubtful currently. They have not officially ruled him out. They did rule out Jermichael Hasty. That'd be something for him to play. I just don't really think he's going to be coming out. This is the NFL, so anything can really happen with these guys in terms of being able to play through pain and injury and surgery on a finger. But if he is out, Wilson moves to be one of the last, I think, RB2 options. Hasty, again, I'm expecting to be out, so we're going to have him and Sermon. If Sermon is hanging around out there, just something to, be considerate of. Just, make sure to keep it on your waiver. And I got something weird going on with my note sheet. So I'm just take care of this real quick. Okay, I don't know what's going on there. Otherwise, it should be Wilson's show here. I'm not expecting the ceiling that you could possibly get out of Mitchell. Mitchell has been a very good runner this year. But if they're going to use 70-30 split for Wilson, I think we're going to see a pretty good day out of him. I think this is a very good matchup for San Francisco against Jaguars, but I'm not pushing him as well way too up my ranks. And if Wilson, if he can't carry as much as the low, there is San Francisco doesn't have a ton of options. So it's Hasty, and because Hasty and Mitchell possibly being out, it's really just going to be those two backs. So make sure they are rostered for sure. Otherwise, I really love this team this week. Garoppolo pops up in my top 12 for the first time this year. He's for sure the quarterback stream of the week. Quarterback 3, 8, and 13 has been his finishes over the last 3 weeks. Kittle, love. Samuel, love. Samuel especially. Bringing in reception around like 30 yards or longer in more games than not this year. This is a player who had, again, negative air yards in 2020. I don't particularly know what to think of him going into the 2022 season. I think he's going to be someone who is going to have his draft rank all over the place. Is he going to be a late second, an early fourth, a mid third? And I think everything's kind of on the table for him. We're seeing one of the best fantasy seasons out of a player, only kind of rivaled by Cooper Kupp in his own division. So really been a strange sort of spot for him. I went into the year saying there was 3 teams I really liked players from: the Chargers, the Cowboys, and the San Francisco 49ers. Samuel was not at the lead of that, but I'm kind of happy that I'm partially looking right on him. I do wish I had more Deebo Samuel because I have a ton of Brandon Ayuk. But otherwise, speaking of Brandon Ayuk, actually, he's kind of the odd man out. I would love to love him this week, but he's just a mid flex wide receiver at best. It's very frustrating. He had just that one little spark a few weeks ago against the Cardinals, and then comes crashing down again. Kittle and Samuel dominate so much of this receiving work, and they're very, very good at it, that I particularly can't just say that Ayuk needs to really be started with much confidence. And over to this Jacksonville side, talk about Monday, but the best receiving option on this team is Dan Arnold, who I am ranking inside my top 12. I ranked him ahead of Kyle Pitts. He's behind the guys like Rob Gronkowski, who's coming back. Dalton Schultz is up in my top 5. But when you have a player like Arnold, who is the best at all the receiving sort of categories for your team, that does not give me much confidence in playing or even recommending any of the other pass catchers. It's James Robinson and it's Dan Arnold, and I do not want anything else from this team, just period. And I think that's going to be the same going forward. This is not a particularly good offense. They spread the ball around a little too thin. So it's going to be an issue for me, saying unless these guys get touches, near the red zone, or they're getting a better production out of these guys, this is just not a good football team. Shenault, Agnew, Jones have been my favorite of the 3. Do not recommend the starters. Cincinnati versus Las Vegas. Cincinnati -1, 49.5 point over under. I'm actually a little bit surprised that Cincinnati is only 1 point favorites in this game. I really think, I guess after the performance against Kansas City Chiefs, I think maybe I'm thinking too poorly of what Vegas can kind of go out there and do. But it might be a good thing for us. Vegas is smarter than us, and if they can produce good games with close totals, that equals a pretty good day for us, all considered. Burrow, Chase, Mixon, all inside my top 10 for their respectable positions. I do kind of miss the internet discourse over Mixon, if he's good or not. It feels like normalcy back to the summer when we didn't have all these players hurt and everything going wrong. But top 5 in full PPR through the last 4 games. Even though the people say he's doing that even the wrong way, but whatever it may be. Higgins and Boyd, a bit tougher. Higgins a high flex for me. Boyd, if you're going to start Boyd any time, I guess this would be a time to do so. But the 4.5 average in fantasy points over the last 4 games that weren't that Jets game where it had 34-31 finish, is not very appealing. Prefer him to the Jacksonville wide receiver we just talked about, which I guess kind of how I see them as a whole. And over on the Las Vegas side, disappointing what we saw out of Kenyon Drake. Moved him a little bit further down my ranks than going into that Kansas City game. I still think he's a fine option, but we only have 2 teams on bye. So there's a possibility that you have a second running back. You might not. But Jacobs and Drake, I think, are fine. Jacobs, of course, is much better play than Drake. But I don't want to say Drake has one down week and now we can't even consider him. Waller we've talked about, none of my top 5. And Hunter Renfrow, I do think, is a very, probably my favorite option of the Las Vegas team, because Waller, we're not seeing those 19 target games. He hasn't scored in 2 months. This has just been a problem for Vegas to not really feature Waller in a better space. I do think if this game is going to stay close, you need these guys to produce. Possibly going to come in too low on Waller, but I'm not really saying that he's a firm locked-in starter. Some tight ends I'm starting over Darren Waller this week. Pat Freiermuth, Mike Gesicki, Hunter Henry last night. That did not particularly work out, but Waller coming in as my tight end 7 on the week. My favorite of the the guys who've disappointed us, Hawkinson, Kyle Pitts. Hawkinson is going to be moving down as well because we have some news on him that we're not going to be probably going to be without Jared Goff this weekend. That might be an upgrade, but in terms of a starting quarterback not playing for a team, I still think of that as a negative overall. So we're going to be moving TJ Hawkinson a little bit further down in my next rankings update. Moving on to Dallas versus Kansas City, and record scratch. Just I was typing the notes up for this episode, and right as I was talking about how this game was basically start everyone, Amari Cooper has been announced to be out. He's going to be out next week as well with COVID because they're playing on the Thursday night Thanksgiving game. But this was a start everyone scenario with some fringe options, but those fringe options are now pretty good. Dalton Schultz, Michael Gallup, much better starts now, along with obviously the rest of them must start. So this is a 56-point total. This is the best game on the week from a fantasy outlook. But I think the only one player that really gets a downgrade in this game, I think, would be Dak without Cooper. But Gallup now in my top 30, Schultz in my top 10. It's hard to say as a blanket statement that a guy like Schultz is going to see more targets because you don't have Cooper. They don't exactly see the same type of work, but more offensive need for him to be able to step up and be produced for them. And Cooper's tough because the exact targets, it's been kind of, he's not seeing enough work for me to say that Cooper is massively missed by the Cowboys, but I'm still treating it as a little bit of a downgrade no matter what. Only three games this season, Cooper has had more than 4 receptions with only 2 games of 70 or more yards. He's not been particularly great. This would have been, hopefully, a very big shootout potential on both sides. Again, the Dallas Cowboys defense, though, has played pretty excellent football this year compared to their relative means of what the Dallas Cowboys put out there on defense. But both quarterbacks, both number 1 receivers, both tight ends, running backs, Darrell Williams. It seems like we're going to be without Clyde Edwards-Helaire again. Andy Reid was kind of hesitant on saying Helaire is fully out for this week, but it looks like it's going to be tricky for Clyde to play. It looks like we're getting closer and closer to him actually returning and being a fantasy starter. And when he does return, I think it's going to be a little tricky figuring out, is it going to be a split between 2? Does Darrell Williams or Clyde become the main back? Something to really just kind of keep an eye on. But it looks like we're going to be a lock and load Darrell Williams again this week. He's going to rise my ranks because right now it shows that Darrell Williams is like around like running back 20 to 24 or so. He's going to be a little bit higher than that in my next rankings update. Arizona versus Seattle. Arizona favorite 2.5, 48-point over-under. I don't know if this line is going to change. It might move a little bit because Hopkins has been ruled out and Murray is a game-time decision. Now, if we're going to be getting a possible Colt McCoy week 3 scenario, man, that does suck. I'm leaning towards Murray playing with the information we currently have. But I do really not love any of the other wide receiver options or Ertz. My only real firm starts from the Arizona side are going to be Murray and Connor, defense not included. And I think Ertz is fine. I think on terms of how tight end scoring has been this year, only 1 week with Arizona has Ertz scored double-digit in fantasy points. Still falling inside like the top 15 with like just around like 6 to 9 fantasy points in full PPR per week. That just kind of shows you how having an elite tight end or near elite or whatever it may be, like, it really matters in terms of overall production when you can just score like 5 points and you're almost sort of a top 12 option. They're all just kind of fine options. I think Connor and Murray as the real guys I'm locking in here. Over on Seattle, it seems like we were going to be without Chris Carson for the week. We are going to be out without Chris Carson for the year, right? So we were hoping for him to possibly return in some capacity with the neck issue. It seems like he was going to practice and almost play at some point in the past few weeks. And then it is now announced today that he is going to be out for the rest of the year. So Alex Collins is going to be the presumed starter for this team. With Rashad Penny mixing in, he was named by Pete Carroll that he's going to see more work this weekend. Pete Carroll, he really has some sort of love for Rashad Penny. Penny has not been a good runner this year at all, but he keeps trying to get him involved. And we've seen entire halves for, again, the presumed starter, Alex Collins, just kind of be lost completely to Rashad Penny. He does not play effectively. Collins comes in and then plays much better. If we can just have full game workloads for Collins, I think he's going to be a very good option. At one point, I thought he was going to be a player who could be a league winner. there is always a possibility to go back and see that happening in the coming weeks. But Alex Collins, as of right now, he has now lost also his designation for this week. He is good to go. He was a DNP yesterday in practice. That was Thursday. But it looks like he's fully active and ready to rock on Sunday, because there was going to be a possibly, have Penny or had DJ Dallas in case of emergency sort of situation for Collins, but it seems like we're going to be without that, which is good. Otherwise, for the rest of this team, Wilson and the rest of the receiving crew, they faced a very tough Green Bay defense last week that has really been corralling a lot of pass attacks. Third best defense in the league is the Green Bay Packers, and now face the fifth best defense in the Arizona Cardinals. So not exactly a strong back-to-back sort of opponents for them if you're looking to be starting some Seattle Seahawks. But Wilson and Metcalf, I'm trying to be confident that it was a 1 week situation, ranking them accordingly inside the top 10. Lockett is a risk reward wide receiver 2, which is pretty much what he's going to always kind of be unless he keeps performing too much risk and not enough reward. Then he'll start dropping further and further. It just kind of, he's like Tyreek Hill light, where it takes one pass and he can just make your entire day right there. So if he's going to get a few of those, we're going to be very happy starting Tyler Lockett. If he doesn't get any of them, we're going to be very sad starting Tyler Lockett. Risk reward. Pittsburgh versus the LA Chargers Sunday Night Football game. This game changed very quickly today with some news. Chargers 5.5 point favorite as to what I have, 47 point over under. Pittsburgh is very easy. We're going to start with them real quick. Harrison Johnson till the end of your days are going to be great options. Johnson, again, he has a very crazy amount of stats about how much target work he gets. Love them. Claypool and Freiermuth are going to be different sort of situation. They're good options. Claypool missed last week with the toe injury. If he was active, maybe they would have won that game, so tying to the Lions because they're bums. But funny enough, he was actually missing from a Frank's fresh rankings page over on Fantasy Pros. I don't know if that means Fantasy Pros doesn't think he's going to play, but I think he's going to play. Otherwise, I prefer Gallup to him in that Dallas-Kansas City game, so that kind of like a barometer on where Claypool's coming in. He's not anywhere near the target share of the main two, and Freiermuth, with now picking him as much work as he has, 29 targets in the last 4 starts. Claypool is just not as much of an appealing option as other guys, because Harrison Johnson are top 12. Freiermuth is top 12, and again, tight end is a little bit different, but with him getting as much work as he is, they are trying to feature him. We're going to come out this year with 2 rookie tight ends who are actually featured in their offenses. And that is pretty freaking mind-blowing to me. But love the other 3. Claypool is fine. Ben is just in super flex leagues only. And the defense, you don't want to start anymore because they lost 3 big boys in this one. You lost TJ Watt, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Joe Hayden all out for this game. So Chargers, I thought this was going to be a trap game for them. At home, Sunday Night Football, pretty high total. And I was looking to see that this was going to be a game where they were going to disappoint. I was under rankings, but now I'm really in favor of this spot because going into the game, they have been a bad passing offense. 4 of the last 6 games under 225 yards passing, coincides with the fall off of Mike Williams. We talked a lot about this on the Monday show, but this has been a bad offense outside the Cleveland game. The only player who's really produced at or at a higher level, basically over the last 2 months or so, has been Keenan Allen. Herbert has been pretty not good. Pretty much. Let me get the let's see if I can get the exact quarterback weekly ranks for him, because he has been very, very disappointing. So on a per game basis, Cleveland, who was number 1 quarterback, then 22nd, 15, 2nd, and 15. So 2 games of just excellent performance. Otherwise, you're seeing a quarterback that is outside your top 12. He's been a player I've been pretty consistently ranking as a top 5 quarterback. So not really fun stuff there. But this is, I think, now a spot where I really love Herbert. I got him over guys like Hurts, Wilson, Burrow, Garoppolo. I really love Keenan Allen. Austin Eckler, I moved up just a few spots because it's hard to really get away from a player like Eckler at running back. And Mike Williams is back into my top 24. And Jared Cook is fine. It's just fine. But now I think you're really going to be in a favorable spot to start all these players. I think it even bumps up the Pittsburgh guys on their side. I think it's going to be a much more exciting game. It's not a particularly easy matchup for the receivers against the Chargers. Chargers, one of the best pass defenses in the league against receivers, specifically in fantasy points allowed. But this game got a lot better very quickly. All these players being ruled out for the Pittsburgh defense. I think it's going to be a very good fantasy game and a really get-right game, hopefully, for this Chargers offense, which saw their lead in the AFC West almost completely evaporate. The Kansas City Chiefs really just kind of in a matter of circumstance are now in the driver's seat, back in the lead spot in the AFC West. Last game, Giants versus Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay favored by 11, 49.5 point over under. So Vegas is not like the Giants in this one, which is understandable. But I think we're going to see for the first time this year an almost entire Giants offense, minus Sterling Shepard. I don't think he's going to play. But this remains, a bad spot for running backs. And the Giants, here's the issue. The Giants keep Barkley out all this time, decide to bring him back against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are a very, very tough run defense, even though whatever just happened with Antonio Gibson, that's neither here nor there. But they bring him back and decide to just run him into the defensive line for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If they're going to run him into that front, I think it's a terrible idea. Get him involved in space, get him involved in the passing game, do different things so that they don't get him killed. It could be a better game plan for the Giants. But them doing nothing inventive that's just on par with the Giants do. But otherwise, we've seen Tampa Bay be a team that can be beat through the air. Tony and Galladay, both low wide receiver 2 flex options for me. I prefer Tony to Galladay, but both I think fine. This is a big game for New York. Having all these players back, this is the most relevant this offense has probably been for 11 weeks. I'm actually really excited for this. Unfortunately, it's a primetime game and it's in Tampa Bay, so them getting just dunked on wouldn't really surprise me. But I'm pretty hopeful that they're going to put a performance where I think we're going to be mildly happy we have New York Giants players in our lineups. Otherwise, on the Tampa Bay side, seems like we're still being without Antonio Brown. Whatever went down with the vaccination stuff, notwithstanding. Love Brady, Fournette, both receivers. The return of Gronkowski, it might change some things for Evans and Godwin in terms of what their ceilings could be. For the very short time, Rob Gronkowski was active. 6 red zone targets on the season. 2 games of 8 targets in the first 3 weeks that he was active. I do hope that he lasts a little bit longer than last time. He did come back in week 8. He played like 5 or 6 snaps, left that game. Has not been seen until this return here in week 11. And that will do it for our week 11 preview. Look at that. We're in under a half hour. We're getting better at this, not keeping a whole bunch of time. I also got to get some homework done, make sure I get that in before midnight. And we got to do some insurance stuff as well. So we got a little stuff going on here. But with that, if it was the first time or last time you spent your time with me, I do appreciate it. Make sure to check out the other shows we have here on Gridiron Ratings on our YouTube channel, Getting Defensive for all the IDP needs, and the slate breaking down DFS action on the weekend. And with that, I have been Matt McCarthy. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Methodical. Make sure to check out my rankings on my Fantasy Pros link under my Twitter profile linked page thing. And with that, good luck in your week 11 games. We'll see you back here on Monday at 7:30.